I'm Aryeh Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The expansion draft, it's here. It's like deja vu, but we better get used to it because we got more expansion drafts over these next few years. Joining me today, Brenden Potts, part of our team over at Winsidr, to discuss all things WNBA expansion draft. So let's dive right in. Before we get into today's show, just a quick reminder, Winsidr is a fully independent WNBA news site. Everything we do is supported by listeners like you. If you enjoy what we're doing, you can help keep it going by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Winsidr. That's patreon.com/Winsidr. With pricing levels for everybody, you're directly supporting the work we put into covering the W year round. We've also got a great team fully producing great written coverage over at winsidr.com, plus more content than ever across TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're in the market for WNBA gear, check out the affiliate links in the show notes and on winsidr.com. You get to rep the league, and Winsidr gets a little support along the way. Welcome back to the show. Excited to be here, Brenden. Excited to chat with you. Excited for your first time on the show, and excited for many more. Hopefully, I'm sure. How you doing today? Where are you?
I'm doing good. I'm live in Sacramento for the Sweet 16 Elite 8. Today's an Elite 8 game. We got UCLA playing Duke. That should be a good one. We got some WNBA prospects here. We certainly got 5 of them on UCLA. But at least. But yeah, man, I'm good. I'm glad to hop on. Thanks as always for having me.
So let's dive right in. We're talking expansion draft. It's a tricky situation. You're Portland based typically. This year a little bit different. We have 2 expansion teams in the draft. They've adjusted the protected amount from 6 to 5 compared to last year. Now expansion drafts in general, they're normally not the craziest of things. You protect your superstars. There's a few players who fall through the cracks. A few players just looking for their opportunity. This year might be a little bit different. With the craziness going on, the W just signed a new CBA. 80% of the league is a free agent. I got to do some more advanced math on what percentage is UFA versus RFA, because that will impact the expansion draft, specifically because if you look at the rules, teams are only allowed to pick one unrestricted free agent, which is kind of crazy and hand tying, hampering, as it were, in my opinion, at least. Teams now also have a much larger cap situation, which is going to cause craziness. Normally expansion drafts kind of send a ripple through the league. CBAs also send a ripple through the league because, early years of CBAs, GMs are trying to figure it out, just like you and I. So I guess my first question is, given all of that craziness, what are some lessons you think Toronto and Portland can learn from last year's expansion team, the Golden State Valkyries?
Yeah, well, I think it works to an advantage for Portland specifically because they have Golden State, an actual like Golden State Valkyries member of their team, Vanya Jarnovic as their GM. So I think that plays to an advantage. But Golden State was really good about finding the diamonds in the rough. And like you said earlier, I think that's what the expansion draft is all about. But the biggest thing that I see here with the fact that only one undrafted free agent can be selected, and I think it goes for every team the expansion teams select is for every team that the expansion teams select from, is just because you select them, just because you pick them, that doesn't guarantee that they're gonna have interest in playing you or in playing with you. And I think that was the same case last year with the Valkyries. Obviously, everybody, that just gives you the right to sign them. But kind of tying in the new CBA, I think the new CBA works really, really well for these expansion teams because they get A, the most money, and obviously because they don't have any players, and B, they have extra priority, I would say, in signing these supermax contracts. and offering those to players who feel like they're worth more. Because I guarantee you, in all 15 teams now, sorry, I lose track every so often. In all 15 teams, I guarantee you the top, there are more than 15 players that, or more than 13 now, that believe they are one of the top 13 players and they want to get paid like it, especially now. So I feel like that puts both Portland and Toronto at an advantage, but I feel like Portland has an extra advantage because they have someone from the Valkyries leading the charge.
No, that's definitely a really good point that I honestly had totally forgotten with all the craziness that's been going on over the past few months.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back to look, you're not getting that's a really good point too about the max contract aspect because in typical expansion drafts, you're not getting top level players, right? Your last year, Tip Hayes was arguably a superstar. Like she's not in her superstar era anymore, let's be real. But
Right.
she still is a top tier player in the league, even if she's on the downswing of her career. To get her was a huge deal. The opportunity of bringing on a player to take on the face of the franchise role is a huge prospect, a huge possibility. And that can come through expansion draft, free agency. It can also come through the normal draft. So that's really interesting. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's really cool. What type of players do you aim for when you think if you put on your GM cap? What type of are you trying to get the best available? Are you trying to get a player who can lift the players around them? Because there's a lot of different theories of practice in expansion drafts building because what is success is also viewed differently by each franchise. Now, obviously, Golden State set the bar very high last year, making the playoffs, and just really, I would say, set the bar like doesn't even like they kicked down the door. They said like,
Mhm.
"Hey, league, we're here. You're not welcoming us. We're announcing we're here," type situation. So and they obviously did it right, but for you, kind of, who do you approach in these different avenues of bringing and making your roster?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I thought about that basically the whole offseason, doing speculating and knowing that I was going to be covering the fire and being like, hey, who could we possibly get? And there, I mean, actually dating back to last season, I've been doing that. Um, but I think there's a couple avenues you could go here, right? You could either compete immediately, like the kind of like the Valkyries did, or you should prepare for the future, and that's where the advantage that Portland and Toronto get coming into play. That max contract thing really goes into effect for them next season, next off season, 2027. So if you want to load up and prioritize for the future, that's an avenue to go to, or you could compete immediately, which both avenues are definitely on the table for both teams. Um, I when I put on my GM hat, I immediately go to of course we speculated who could be capped, who could be protected. I understand why those names aren't released, but I think they should be released just so we have a better idea of who the teams could take and what their vision is. Um, I think it's really important to know that Vanya does not want or does not view it as a copy and paste kind of thing. And I think that's very interesting. So she definitely has her own vision for the fire. But if and I can't speak for Toronto, but if I'm putting my GM hat, the first name that I look at is Louisa Gosensoder, or I don't know how to pronounce that the last name from the Dallas Wings. And I talked about it with you off, but the key in this, and I've talked around people with around here too, is the key is going to be Aryeh. What happens with Aryeh? Does Dallas want to keep her? Does Dallas want to let her go explore the expansion draft and possibly get selected to a new team? So the key is going to be Aryeh. And I've always thought the four players you could easily guarantee for Dallas. Which, by the way, side note, I think five players in this format is really smart. But the key is going to be Aryeh, and if you want to keep her, then I think Dallas is going to have to choose between Lee Uru and Louisa, and I don't think they're going to pass on protecting a player that they gave up assets for in Liu. But so process of elimination that gives up Louisa, and I think that's a very smart move if you want to gain some front court depth right away is picking Louisa. Um, Another player I really liked from this possible possible field. I really like Ezzy McGregor, and I think I've heard rumors and stuff that she may not want to be back with the Storm with the emergence of Dominique Malonga, um, and obviously they have a new coach at the helm. So that really the expansion draft is going to be really telling on it's expansion draft for free agency is going to be really telling on what Seattle wants to do, in terms of like competing for a championship or preparing for the future, because they have a young piece in Dominique Malonga. Um, I just don't know if they'll have enough room if they end up keeping Nneka and Skylar. Um, and so by process of elimination, I like Ezzy. Um, I've banged the drum like hell to get Jade Melvin on the Portland Fire, one of my favorite players in the W. She plays for the Washington Mystics. Obviously, on that front, I'm a little biased, but that would be another pick of mine. I've talked with some people saying jokingly, and they've jokingly said like, Sandy Brundell is just going to bring her whole Australian team back, and I'm like, yeah, that would kind of be OP if she did that, but there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for that to happen. But I think in general, when you look at look at the possibilities, you're obviously not going to look at the big time players. Those players are going to be kept. So, and we saw that last year too. So you automatically should pivot towards the bottom of the roster, and you'd actually find that there's a lot of good, usable, developmental talent that can fit your vision, can fit your mold.
I like that. That's very true. Here, I have a fun one for you. Start bench cut for building an expansion team, okay? So start bench cut, the expansion draft, free agency, and the college draft.
This free agency. This free agency or free agency
you can qualify it however you want.
Oh man. For building through an expansion team.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Okay, I mean, obviously we have a small sample size, but start expansion draft. I'm immediately gonna cut free agency and then use the college draft, and I'll tell you why. I'm cutting free. Well, it goes with like free agency because we didn't see a lot of players last year go to Golden State. Now, I'm biased, but I think Portland's a great destination to come to. Toronto, all the history they're making with the first team in Canada. So, a lot of things go into free agency and negotiating contracts and that kind of stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot of that I think we're going to see Golden State be quite active in free agency this year. So that'll be more telling. But this is really the separator for me. So for people who aren't familiar, the Portland Fire got the number 1 pick in the expansion draft, but Toronto won the inevitable coin toss between the two teams. And so they chose to select second, but also select 6th in the upcoming college draft. So with that, I mean, I could be looking way too much into this, but what that tells me is you value the college draft, this college draft that we're about to have, which is one of the best we've ever had, by the way. You value this class just a smidge more than you do the potential available expansion team options. So that's what that tells me. I could be reading way too much into this, and you also have to factor in like they're doing in a snake in a they're doing an expanded draft also in a snake order. So but that's the first thing that jumped out to me on that front.
Yeah, no, they definitely went draft more important, at least for this year. I completely
Yeah,
understand that too, because you control like you control your pick.
yeah,
And like, yeah, there's 5 teams before you, so there's limitations obviously, but the difference of, the other teams controlling who you're even allowed to take and who the pool is, I'm completely with you on that. I hear that. I think that was a smart move by Toronto. My last question for you before we wrap up here is, and you kind of touched on this, I'm curious for you, if you had to choose, we have on the one hand a GM in Portland who experienced an expansion draft just last year from the team of being an expansion team. On the
mhm,
other hand, on the other team, you have a GM who has played in the W and has been a WNBA front office person, but then also you have a head coach who has her finger on the pulse of not only just the W, but the international game in general, but then also the W as a coach who has had experience, who has gained so much. Who do you think is poised, forgetting who's picking first in the expansion draft or first in this draft? Who do you think, you have a little bit more continuity, but you have that little bit more experience from the draft, from the expansion draft. Who do you think's poised to be in a better situation, Portland or Toronto, just for the building of this roster?
yeah. Um, I'm going to make I oh man, it's very, very, very close, and I'll explain why in a second. But I'm going to take it's really hard for me to say, but Toronto. Um, and I think that's the consensus pick as well. But I'll kind of play devil's advocate for Portland here. Um, like you said, they have a front office where they're very familiar with each other. Um, I believe they both were with Phoenix. I don't know if they were with Phoenix at the same time. I'd have to look back on if they were, but they both experienced success. They both been in Phoenix at one point or another, so they're very familiar with each other. And Sandy has that track record of winning WNBA championships, winning gold or winning medals in international playing and stuff like that. But with Portland, um, and this is something that I want to get into down down the road when we get into the season. With Portland, um, they have a very complex system with Alex Sarama being the head coach for the Fire. Um, but I think the big thing that we really all need to take into consideration is Vanya and Alex have worked together with the London Lions, and they've experienced success over there with the London Lions. Vanya has led that team or that program to multiple overseas championships, and it's been very successful over there. And Alex has definitely been a part of that. But Vanya's been very vocal about um, their vision being united, them having a united vision, um, and kind of playing off of Alex's system. Um, so I think that it's going to be interesting and I imagine hard to identify players that fit his complex system, but um, I that's why I would say Toronto is because we know what Sandy brings to the table. We don't quite know exactly what Alex is bringing to the table. Um, but that doesn't mean we should just discredit it or criticize it whatsoever, which is what I saw basically almost immediately when he was hired, and I just wanted to do my research first before forming an opinion.
No, that totally makes sense. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, got a lot going on. And to close
Yeah.
out this episode, I want to say thank you to listening and supporting independent WNBA coverage to our listeners. Winsidr has been doing this for a long time, and it only works because of a community like you. So